stop what you are doing. I need you to understand something before we get into today's astrology, because what just happened in the sky is not subtle, and I don't think most people realize how significant it actually is. In the last 6 days, the sky handed us the Saturn-Neptune conjunction, a once-in-36-year event that cracked the foundation of an entire era. Venus trine Jupiter, and for one brief warm day the whole atmosphere felt generous. Mercury crept slower and slower toward a station, while your thoughts started looping and your dreams got sharper, and your phone kept making you feel like someone was about to reach out. And then last night at 10:48 p.m. Pacific time, everything stopped. Mercury is retrograde. Right now, today, as you watch this, not in a few days, not building toward it. It happened last night and you woke up inside it this morning. And here is the part that nobody is talking about. The moon left Gemini at 12:10 a.m. and settled into Cancer, which is where the moon is most at home, most powerful, most emotionally raw and honest and unfiltered. So you have Mercury, the planet of your mind, your communication, the part of you that processes things into language, going backward, and the moon, the planet of your emotional body, your instincts, your gut responses and deepest feelings, moving into the sign where it operates at full power. Your mind just pumped the brakes. Your heart just floored it. That combination, the mind slowing down and the emotional body accelerating at the exact same moment, is the thing you are feeling right now if you have been feeling anything at all today. That restlessness, that strange heaviness in the chest, that sense that something shifted overnight and you cannot quite put your finger on what it was. That urge to reach out to someone, or to go somewhere quiet, or to just sit with something you have been avoiding for weeks. That is not in your head. That is the sky. And this is not a minor day. This is the kind of astrological setup that quietly rewires things. Not loudly, not dramatically, but at the level of what you feel and what you finally admit to yourself. So stay with me, because what is happening today is the thing this entire wild month of February has been building toward. And once you understand it, the next 3 weeks make a lot more sense. Before we get into it, leave a like and subscribe if you've been following this week's astrology, and drop "I feel it too" in the comments. I want to see how many of you woke up today feeling like something changed overnight without being able to explain why. Okay, let us get into what is actually going on. Let me give you the full picture of where we actually are right now, because context matters enormously today. February 2026 has been, by almost any astrological measure, one of the more intense months in recent memory. Most astrologers had it circled before the year even started. A solar eclipse in Aquarius on the 17th. The Saturn-Neptune conjunction at 0 degrees Aries on the 20th, the first time those two planets had met in 36 years, and the first time in over 150 years that their meeting happened at the absolute first degree of the entire zodiac. Venus trining Jupiter from exalted Pisces to exalted Cancer on the 22nd. The first quarter moon in Gemini on the 24th, pressing on all of it. And then Mercury's final slow crawl toward the station, spending days barely moving, hovering at 22 degrees Pisces, while everyone's thoughts started feeling like they were wading through water. That is an extraordinary amount of astrological material compressed into 10 days. And the thing about a month like that is that it does not actually finish when the calendar page turns. The Saturn-Neptune conjunction did not resolve itself on the 20th and move on. It is still sitting right there, Saturn and Neptune both in early Aries, the questions it raised still hanging in the air, the answers still forming. The eclipse from the 17th opened something that eclipse energy opens, which is a doorway into a new cycle that takes months to fully understand. The Venus-Jupiter warmth from a few days ago was real, but warmth after structural disruption takes time to settle into something lasting. So, this is not a day that arrives as its own fresh start. It arrives as the morning after. The morning after an enormous amount of seismic astrological activity, when the ground is still adjusting and the dust has not fully settled and you are just beginning to take stock of what actually changed. and what is still changing, and what is still changing, and what you need to pay closer attention to. Mercury stationing retrograde in Pisces this morning is the sky saying, now you sit with it. Now you stop pushing forward and you let the understanding catch up to the experience. And the Cancer moon arriving at the same moment is the sky adding, and you do that with your whole emotional body open, not defended, not efficient, not trying to process everything into a tidy resolution. You do it the Cancer way, which means you feel first and understand second, and you let yourself need what you need without apologizing for it. That is actually a remarkable setup for a day. It is not comfortable necessarily, but it is purposeful in a way that very few days manage to be. There is also something worth noting about where Mars is sitting right now, because Mars does not get mentioned enough in this week's conversation. Mars is at about 14 degrees Sagittarius, and it is forming a square to the lunar nodes, the North Node in Pisces and the South Node in Virgo. That Mars node square is what astrologers call a skipped step configuration, which is a technical way of saying that there is something you have been avoiding doing, some action you have been putting off, some decision you have been circling without landing, that Mars is now standing in the middle of and demanding you address. Mars in Sagittarius does not do patience. It wants movement, direction, commitment to a path. And squaring the nodes, it is essentially saying that the direction you choose right now has karmic weight. It matters more than a regular daily decision. The thing you have been avoiding is the thing that needs addressing. So pile that onto the Mercury retrograde and the Cancer moon, and you have a day that is emotionally wide open, mentally slowed down, and nudging you, through Mars, toward something you have been putting off dealing with. Not forcing you, nudging, but persistently. The week as a whole ends here with this configuration, and what it is inviting you into is the exact opposite of the relentless forward motion that the first 3 weeks of February demanded. This is the exhale. This is the period where you stop accumulating experience and you actually process it. Here is the thing about Mercury retrograde in Pisces specifically, and I want to spend real time on this because it is one of the most misunderstood Mercury retrograde placements there is. People hear Mercury retrograde and they immediately go to the practical inconveniences, the tech glitches, the travel delays, the contracts you should not sign, and the emails that get misread, and the conversations that go sideways in ways you did not intend. And yes, all of that is real, all of it happens, and yes, it is worth being a little more careful and deliberate in your communications for the next 3.5 weeks. But the more interesting question is not what Mercury retrograde does to your calendar, it is what it does to your mind. And in Pisces, that is a very specific thing. Mercury in Pisces is already operating in unconventional territory. Mercury wants precision, definition, the ability to take something and name it accurately and communicate it cleanly. It is the planet of the filing system, the inbox, the linear train of thought that moves from A to B to C, and Pisces refuses all of that. Pisces operates in impressions, in feelings that arrive before words, in the kind of knowing that happens in the body before it reaches the mind. Mercury in Pisces is like trying to organize fog. The edges keep dissolving. The categories keep overlapping. The thing you thought you understood clearly keeps revealing new layers. When Mercury goes retrograde inside that already foggy territory, the backward motion intensifies the dissolving quality. Your thoughts loop. They circle back. You think you are done with something and it resurfaces 3 hours later from a slightly different angle. You lose the thread of an idea you were developing. You start a sentence and change direction midway because something shifted between the beginning and the end of the thought. And here is what most people miss: that looping, that circling back, that apparent loss of forward momentum in your thinking is not malfunction. It is the retrograde doing exactly what it is designed to do. Mercury retrograde in any sign is a review period. It is the mind going back over what it moved through too quickly, retrieving what it filed away before properly understanding it, re-examining what it thought was settled. In Pisces, what Mercury goes back to examine are the emotional undercurrents that rational forward-moving thinking always moves too fast to fully register. The feelings you rationalized away, the intuitions you dismissed because you could not find evidence for them, the thing you knew without knowing why you knew it, the conversation that felt off in a way you could not articulate, the relationship dynamic you sensed but did not examine. Mercury retrograde in Pisces retrieves all of that. It surfaces it not to confuse you but to give you a second pass at understanding it correctly. So the practical experience of this retrograde, especially in the first few days when the station energy is still strong, is going to be a kind of inward turn that feels unfamiliar if you have been in the full external momentum of February. Your mind gets quieter but also more interior. You find yourself thinking about things you thought you were finished thinking about. Old memories surface with a pointed relevance, like they are asking to be reconsidered. Dreams get more vivid and more emotionally loaded. Someone from your past shows up either in your thoughts or in actual life, and their reappearance is not random. The retrograde runs through March 20th, which is the spring equinox, and that timing is genuinely beautiful once you sit with it. The day the season turns, the day the northern hemisphere tips into spring and forward energy returns to the natural world, is the same day Mercury stations direct. So the entire arc of this retrograde is the arc of late winter, the inward root-level processing that happens underground before anything blooms. Mercury retrograde in Pisces is not standing in the way of your spring. It is doing the work that makes spring possible. There is also a Cazimi moment on March 7th that I want you to know about, because it matters if the early days of this retrograde feel particularly murky. The Cazimi is when Mercury and the Sun are exactly conjunct, and in traditional astrology, that moment is considered the most clarifying point of any retrograde. The planet at the heart of the Sun, purified, distilled to its essential signal. Cazimi moments during retrogrades are famous for producing the one clear piece of understanding in the middle of the confusion, the thing that makes sense of the whole period. So if right now, in these first few days, everything feels more muddled than clear, March 7th at 16 degrees Pisces is your landmark. Hold out for it. For the next 3.5 weeks, the quality of thinking that serves you is not logical and forward-moving. It is intuitive and circular and patient. Sit longer with things before reaching for resolution. Let the loops happen without forcing them closed. Write things down not to organize them, but to surface them. And pay particular attention to what keeps coming back, because the thing your mind returns to during Mercury retrograde in Pisces is almost always the thing that most needs your honest attention. The moon entered Cancer at 12:10 this morning, which means most of you woke up already inside Cancer moon energy without knowing it. And I want to explain what that actually feels like in the body, because Cancer moon days have a very distinct quality that is worth understanding, especially given everything else that is active right now. Cancer is the sign the moon rules. It is home territory, and when the moon is in the sign it rules, it operates at full expression, full power, full uninhibited emotional sensitivity. There is nowhere for it to hide in Cancer, and no reason for it to. Cancer is water, instinct, the tidal pull of feeling, the protective shell that forms around whatever you love most. When the moon is here, your emotional body is not a passenger in your day. It is driving. What that looks like practically is a heightened awareness of how things feel before you have any analytical understanding of why they feel that way. You walk into a room and know something is off before anyone says a word. You read a message and feel something in your chest before you have processed its content. You make a decision based on what your gut says before your mind has built a case for it. That is Cancer moon operating. It is not irrational. It is pre-rational, which is actually faster and often more accurate than the rational version. Cancer moon days also tend to pull your attention toward what matters most emotionally. Family, home, the people you feel genuinely safe with, the places where you can put down whatever armor you carry through the rest of your life. If you have been meaning to reach out to someone you love, today is the day it actually happens. If there has been tension in a close relationship that you have been managing with distance and logistics, the Cancer moon dissolves that strategy. The feeling comes through anyway. The need comes through anyway. Cancer does not let you stay comfortable in the avoidance. There is also a very specific thing that happens when a Cancer moon coincides with Mercury retrograde in Pisces, and I think it is the most important thing I can tell you about today. Mercury retrograde is quieting the mind. It is slowing down your analytical processing, your ability to explain things to yourself, your habitual tendency to turn experience into language as quickly as possible. And the Cancer moon is simultaneously turning up the volume on everything your body and your emotional intelligence already know. So what you get today is a kind of rare clarity that does not come through thinking. It comes through feeling. The things you have been unable to figure out with your rational mind are suddenly obvious to your gut. The relationship situation that has been endlessly complicated in your head has a very simple felt truth when you stop thinking and just notice what you actually feel when you think about it. The decision that has been impossible to make logically has an answer. Your body already knows if you are willing to ask it instead of your spreadsheet. This is not easy for everyone, particularly if you are someone who has trained yourself to distrust your feelings as unreliable data. Our culture rewards the analytical mind and treats emotion as something that clouds good judgment. Mercury retrograde in Pisces and a Cancer moon in combination are essentially a direct challenge to that framework. They are asking you to try the other way, to let the feeling be the information. To trust that what your body knows is as valid as what your mind can prove. Jupiter is also retrograde in Cancer right now, which adds an interesting layer. Jupiter retrograde in its own sign of exaltation, sitting in Cancer, is turning inward the qualities of Cancer at their most expanded. The capacity for emotional generosity, for nurturing, for the deep sense of belonging that Cancer at its best produces, all of that is in review mode. What that tends to manifest as is a turning of attention back toward foundational emotional needs that have been overlooked in outward expansion. Not expanding new emotional territory, going deeper into the territory that already exists. What do you actually need to feel emotionally secure? What have you been claiming to be fine without that you are actually not fine without? Jupiter retrograde in Cancer asks those questions with unusual directness. And Venus is still in Pisces, moving through about 18 or 19 degrees now, still exalted, still in that open-hearted, porous, unconditionally loving mode that Pisces produces for Venus. Venus in Pisces softens everything around it. On a day when Mercury retrograde might make communication feel scrambled, and the Cancer moon might make emotions feel overwhelming, Venus in Pisces is the grace note. The reason that even the difficult emotional material today has a quality of compassion underneath it. Even when things are hard, there is love in the texture of the day. That is not nothing. That is actually quite a lot. Not everyone is going to feel today equally. Some of you will have a slightly foggy, inward reflective Thursday and wonder what all the fuss is about. Others of you are going to feel like the ground moved. The difference usually comes down to where your personal planets are in your chart and how directly today's transits are hitting them. But based on the general structure of what is happening, there are 4 signs that are going to feel this the most acutely, and I want to address each of them directly. Pisces, this is your Mercury retrograde in the most personal sense. Mercury is moving backward through your first house, which is your house of self, identity, and the way you present yourself to the world. Over the next 3 weeks, something about how you have been representing yourself is going to come up for examination. Not in a critical way necessarily, but in an honest way. Are you showing up as the version of yourself that actually matches what is happening internally? Or has there been a gap developing between the face you put on for the world and what you genuinely feel and think and want? Mercury retrograde in your first house is specifically designed to close that gap. It does it by slowing down your external presentation long enough for your internal truth to catch up. The Cancer moon adds to this by making you emotionally transparent in ways you cannot entirely control. Things slip out. The feeling shows on your face before you decide whether to show it. This can feel vulnerable and exposed if you are not used to it, but it is actually an opportunity. People cannot connect to a version of you that is managed and maintained. They can only connect to the real one. And today the real one is unusually close to the surface. Cancer, your rising emotional intensity today is not a problem to be solved. It is information. The moon in your own sign activates your entire emotional field and turns the sensitivity dial up to a level that can feel almost too much if you have not been tending to yourself well lately. Mercury retrograde in your 9th house of beliefs, education, and the bigger picture of your life means you may be reconsidering something you thought you had figured out about, where you are going and why. A plan that seems solid may not feel as solid when you sit with it emotionally. A belief you have been operating from may start showing its seams. This is not bad news. This is the retrograde giving you a chance to make sure your direction is actually yours, and not just the path of least resistance or the option that made the most logical sense at the time. Let the emotional truth tell you something the logic may have missed. Scorpio, Mercury retrograde is moving through your 5th house of creativity, self-expression, romance, and what you make, for the pure pleasure of making it. This is actually one of the more quietly productive placements for a Mercury retrograde, because the 5th house is where you make things that did not exist before, and Mercury retrograde in Pisces adds a depth of feeling and intuitive access to that creative process that forward-moving Mercury rarely allows. If you have a creative project that stalled, this is a genuine window for returning to it with different eyes. If there is a romantic situation with unfinished conversation, this retrograde supports revisiting it. The Cancer moon activates your 9th house today, which adds a philosophical, expansive quality to your emotional experience. You may feel pulled toward meaning-making, toward understanding not just what you feel, but why your feelings follow the patterns they do. That is productive territory for Scorpio. Virgo, you are the opposite sign to Pisces, which means this retrograde is moving directly through your 7th house of partnerships, both personal and professional. Mercury retrograde in the 7th is the one that most directly activates relationship territory. Conversations that did not get finished get revisited. Misunderstandings from the past few weeks come back for clarification. Someone you thought you understood reveals a layer you had not quite registered. And someone you thought understood you may need a second conversation to get there. None of this has to be dramatic. The 6th sense of communication the Cancer moon gives you today is actually useful here, because you can feel where a relationship stands before the words fully form. Trust that. The Cancer moon is in your 11th house, which is community, friendships, and collective belonging. There may be a pull today toward being with people who genuinely know you, not the professional version or the put-together version, but the actual you. Honor that pull if you can. For the rest of the signs, look at where Pisces falls in your chart. Whatever house sits in Pisces is where Mercury is walking backward through your life for the next 3.5 weeks. That house is your specific territory for review, retrieval, and honest re-examination. Aries, it is your 12th house, the most interior place in the chart. Taurus, your 11th, community and friendships. Gemini, your 10th, career and public direction. Leo, your 8th, intimacy and shared resources. Libra, your 6th, daily routines and work. Sagittarius, your 4th, home and emotional foundations. Capricorn, your 3rd, communication and immediate environment. Aquarius, your 2nd, money and personal values. In every case, the invitation is the same. Look again, stay longer. Let the understanding catch up with the experience. There is a conjunction coming up in 3 days that I want to bring into the conversation because it shapes the entire first week of this retrograde and gives it a particular emotional coloring that is worth understanding. On February 28th, Mercury retrograde backs into Venus, which is still moving forward through Pisces. Mercury going backward and Venus moving forward meet at roughly 18 degrees Pisces. And that conjunction, the planet of the mind meeting the planet of the heart at the very beginning of the retrograde cycle in the most feeling-oriented sign in the zodiac, sets the tone for everything that follows. What it means practically is that the first thing Mercury does in its retrograde journey is link up with what you love. The emotional material this retrograde surfaces, the things it sends you back to re-examine, the conversations it dredges up for a second look, the feelings it insists on bringing to the surface, all of it will be colored by Venusian themes. Relationships, values, what you find beautiful, what you are attached to, what you have been telling yourself you do not need that you actually very much need. Mercury retrograde in Pisces touching Venus is the retrograde saying, go back and look honestly at your heart. Not your relationship status, not your love life as a logistical matter, but the actual internal landscape of what you feel and want and have been afraid to admit. Mercury will take you back there. Venus will make sure you feel it fully when you arrive. This conjunction also has a specific quality for communication. Venus softens Mercury's retrograde tendency toward miscommunication. When these two are conjunct, especially in Pisces, there is an increased capacity for emotional honesty in conversations that are approached with care. This is not the retrograde period for cold, clinical, efficient exchanges. It is the retrograde period for the conversations that begin with, I need to tell you something, and I am not sure I have the right words. Those conversations, done with genuine feeling behind them, tend to go better than expected under Mercury-Venus in Pisces. The feeling carries the communication even when the language is imperfect. And Venus in Pisces adds something else to the whole texture of today specifically. Venus exalted is love at its most unconditional, most open, least transactional. In Pisces, Venus does not love strategically or selectively. It loves the way water fills whatever container it is poured into. That quality, on a day when the Cancer moon is already making your emotional body unusually raw and present, means there is a kind of tenderness available today that does not require you to earn it or explain it. It is just there, in the quality of a moment, in the unexpected warmth you feel towards someone, in the way something small, a particular light in a room, a song, a smell, lands with unusual weight. Pay attention to those moments today, not because they are mystical or extraordinary, but because Mercury retrograde in Pisces and Venus and the Cancer moon in combination are specifically good at pointing you toward what you actually love and what actually matters to you, before your mind gets the chance to override the message with practicality and logic and all the very good reasons why that thing is complicated or inconvenient or unrealistic. The heart knows first. Today, the sky is built in a way that lets you hear it. Let me pull back far enough to give you the larger frame, because I think it helps to understand today not just as a single astrological event, but as the conclusion of an extraordinary month. February 2026 was always going to be the kind of month that asked big questions. The Saturn-Neptune conjunction at 0 Aries was the centerpiece, the conjunction of the planet of structure and limitation with the planet of dissolution and the infinite, meeting at the very first degree of a fire sign, the degree where new cycles begin. That conjunction asked you, in the most direct astrological language possible, what are you building and is it real? What are you believing and is it honest? What does your life actually look like, stripped of the stories you tell yourself about it, and what does that reveal about what needs to change? Those are not comfortable questions. And the eclipse on the 17th, the Aquarius solar eclipse that opened a new 18-month cycle in the Leo-Aquarius axis, added another layer of destabilization and opening. Eclipses do not ease you in, they change the landscape and let you figure out where you are afterward. The first quarter moon on the 24th was the first stress test of whatever the eclipse opened, the moment where intention met friction and you found out whether the direction was solid or needed adjustment. All of that activity, that extraordinary 10-day period of seismic astrological events, has been building pressure, building questions, building the need for something that all that activity did not provide, which is the time and the space and the emotional openness to actually understand what happened and what it means for you. Mercury stationing retrograde in Pisces is that time and space. The Cancer moon is that emotional openness. Together, today, they are the exhale at the end of a breath that has been held for most of February. And the specific gift of Mercury retrograde in Pisces as the tool for processing a Saturn-Neptune conjunction is worth noting because it is actually a beautifully appropriate match. The Saturn-Neptune conjunction raised questions about reality versus illusion, about what is genuinely solid in your life versus what you have been holding together with narrative. And Mercury retrograde in Pisces, which specifically goes back to surface what was felt before it was understood, which retrieves the intuitive knowing that got bypassed by the urgency of forward motion, is exactly the right instrument for examining those questions honestly. Pisces does not let you stay in comfortable illusions, it dissolves them. And retrograde Mercury going backward through Pisces is going to make sure you look at what has been dissolved with clear enough eyes to understand what it was actually made of. There is a specific quality to the next 3.5 weeks that is different from any other period this year so far, and I want to name it directly. This is the period where February's upheaval becomes understanding, not resolution necessarily. Some of what this month raised will take much longer than 3 weeks to resolve. But understanding, genuine comprehension of what changed and why and what it means, that arrives during Mercury retrograde in Pisces. It arrives through feeling your way rather than thinking your way. It arrives in dreams and in the conversations that go unexpectedly deep, and in the memories that surface with fresh relevance, and in the quiet moments when you stop moving and the truth has room to reach you. The month that just happened in the sky was genuinely one of the most significant periods in recent astrological history. February 2026 will be talked about by astrologers for a long time, the same way they talk about other months that carried Saturn-Neptune conjunctions or eclipse series, beginnings or rare planetary configurations at world point degrees. And the retrograde period you just entered is the integration chapter. The part where you, personally, make sense of what the cosmos did to the collective. Take it seriously. Give it the time and interior space it is asking for. Do not rush through the next 3 weeks trying to get to the clarity on the other side of them. The clarity is in the slowness. The understanding is in the looping. The spring that begins on March 20th when Mercury stations direct and the season turns. That spring is going to mean something different, something more earned and more genuine, because of everything Mercury retrograde in Pisces does between now and then. So here is where things actually stand today. The Cancer moon is making you feel everything more than usual, and that is not a problem to be managed. Mercury is retrograde in Pisces, and your mind is doing what retrograde minds do, which is to circle back and retrieve and re-examine. And that is not malfunction, it is the process. Venus in Pisces is keeping a quality of compassion underneath the difficulty, making sure even the hard emotional material today is touched by something loving. And Mars squaring the nodes is quietly pressing on the thing you have been avoiding, asking you to make a choice rather than continuing to orbit around it without landing. You did not sleep through anything. You did not miss the moment. The month of extraordinary activity just handed you the period where you get to understand what it all actually meant, and that is worth a lot more than it sounds. If this landed for you, leave a like and subscribe, and drop "I feel it too" in the comments so I can see who is in this with me. Take care of yourself today. You know what you need, even if you can't fully explain it yet. I will see you in the next one.